Hi everybody, and welcome to our 4 o'clock live. I am here today with John Tobias. Hello John, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you.
I'm so glad you're here. Everybody, John is a dear friend of mine, and he's also one of our employees over at the Edge Treatment Center. You are very dear to my heart.
Thank you. The feeling is mutual.
I feel like I can talk to you and you just have so much knowledge. We were sitting here talking just candidly before we started, and everything we talked about, I was like, oh my goodness, we just need to stop talking and do all of this for the live, because you have this wisdom, you know, that comes with time and being in long-term recovery.
There's been a lot of time, so that helps.
And people respect you and they want to listen to you.
Thank you.
I feel that you have so much to tell people.
Thank you.
So I'd love to dive into all sorts of different things about being in long-term recovery, but can we start with you just kind of telling everybody a little bit about yourself? And
Absolutely.
Okay.
Well, John Tobias is my name. I was born and raised in a mid-sized town, 30,000 people or so, in southern Wisconsin, Beloit, Wisconsin. I would call it more a blue-collar town, a lot of industry at the time that I grew up, very diverse ethnically town. I grew up in the 50s and 60s, so it was a different time. But my parents were great to me. They provided everything any child would want. My dad was, he was my role model, I would say, although I wasn't really close to him in a real personal sense, but I admired him. He was very heavy drinker, by the way, and that was, in some ways, that was sort of my gateway into drinking in the sense that I would see, he was a shoe salesman for many years. He traveled all over the country and elsewhere, and shoe salesmen drink a lot. I guess every profession seems to drink a lot, but in any case, I would see the magical change, the transformation. People seemed to have fun when they drank, and the frivolity and all that. So and he would always, when he came home, he'd always have a beer or 2 or 3 or whatever, and he'd give me a little glass of beer, and I'd drink that. This when I was a little kid, and I think he just wanted me to taste it, whatever. But my drinking was, I was an alcoholic right out of the chutes. There was no question about it. I couldn't wait to join in the fun, so to speak, and first time I drank, I blacked out, couldn't wait to do it again, and never, from that time forward, I never had control in my drinking. The loss of control thing, I think some people misunderstand that, feeling that loss of control means that a person who drinks heavily always behaves erratically and crazy, and I've got plenty of that in my background too, but loss of control really means there's no predicting with any certainty what's going to happen once you start, and that was definitely the case with me. But in any case, my childhood was good. I was provided for very well. My dad was a very generous person. He taught me generosity. He would take me on trips with him. When I went on my first airplane ride at, I guess I was probably 10 years old, on the old DC-3 airplane. He took me to New York and Boston and different places. And when I was with him on the road, I saw how he partied, you know, and I liked it. I admired him. I wanted to model myself after him in a certain way. So a certain amount of my my entry into alcohol, at least, was influenced by my dad, I would say.
Yeah, and that's something that we don't look at sometimes, you know, and how we're role models to people and we don't even realize it, you know, and for him, you just wanted to be like your dad, and you were genetically disposed to it, and and had that ism.
Definitely.
And he was just thinking like, oh, this is my son, and give him a little sip here and there, but that was just enough. And it's a good thing for people to know that, because a lot of times we think it's funny, or we think, oh, just have a little sip, or look what I'm doing, or whatever it is, and we don't realize that it could really be setting the person up.
Yeah. My father was, I think, a very good example of what's described in the AA Big Book, the basic text, of the problem drinker versus necessarily the alcoholic who goes over another line. But the difference being that my dad drank to excess, there's no question, but I don't think there was a day in his life that he missed work. He was always up at like 5 in the morning. He may have been drinking till 1 in the morning or 2, but he was up and at 'em. So the aspect of alcoholism, if you look at it in terms of like step 1, I'm definitely an advocate of 12-step recovery, but step 1 is about admitting powerlessness and unmanageability. The powerlessness with me was almost an attraction. I liked the fact I didn't know what was going to happen. It was kind of like as a kid going to a big amusement park and getting on a roller coaster. Oh, this is going to be exciting. I don't know when so that I understood. But the unmanageability part, the consequences, all of the destruction that alcoholism brings, it took me a long time to admit that and accept that's the way it was. So in any case, my dad never had that unmanageability part. So you could maybe refer to him as a manageable alcoholic or whatever, but
functioning.
Functioning, yeah. But he was a heavy drinker in any case. My mom was an amazing person, good person. I had 2 sisters. I have one who's alive. One passed away at 42 years old, sadly. She was drinking very heavily at the time she died, but she had other emotional issues. That runs through my family. Bipolar illness plays a big role in my life because I don't mind or hesitate to share that I'm bipolar, diagnosed bipolar many years ago. It's been manageable for as long as I've been sober, actually. But there's, addiction, chemical dependency is a very complex illness. And as you know, we see a lot of what's called dual diagnosis or co-occurring disorders is the terminology nowadays. So many people are dealing with addiction or addictive illness, but at the same time with some other co-occurring emotional illness. And that was the case with me.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So how did you deal with your mental health diagnosis and your addiction?
I would attribute my recovery in terms of the mental health aspect primarily to a psychiatrist in the Chicago area where I lived at one time in my life, before coming to California, actually. Dr. David Leader, I don't mind saying his name, he's one of those people who looms large in my background. But he diagnosed me properly, explained mental illness to me, explained bipolar illness to me. He knew addiction, he knew 12-step recovery. He was a talk psychiatrist at the time. And that runs, you don't see too many psychiatrists nowadays who do talk therapy. It's mostly, medication, manipulation in a sense. Not that that's wrong necessarily, but I'm just saying that he was of a different breed. And he really saved my life in many ways. Many people contributed to saving my life, for sure.
Yeah, it's nice that you're willing to talk openly about that, because there's such a stigma still with mental
Absolutely.
health, and people don't want to talk about it. You know, they're embarrassed, or you know, they think there's something wrong with them. So I think it's so important to be able to talk about that. So thank you for talking about
Absolutely.
that and sharing with us. So you're able to, did you get on medication for it, or was it more?
I did. At the time, the medication lithium, which is still used widely for bipolar illness, bipolar 1, where there's the mania and the depression, and I was, I would consider myself a recovered bipolar individual who is of the diagnosis bipolar 1, which means I had extremes. And the mania extreme part of it is very difficult for a person to describe it, other than to say it's includes delusion and grandiose thinking and bizarre behavior. In my case, and plus I was drinking heavily and doing a lot of different other substances on top of that. So to answer your question, yeah, medication definitely helped me in the beginning. Lithium was the one that worked for me, but it doesn't work for everyone. But I can say, just so you know, I'm not going to get manic during this interview or anything, hopefully. No, I haven't had any episodes of that nature, actually, since I sobered up.
Wow.
And that was in February of '88.
February of '88. Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Where were you then?
February of '88. I was in grade. I was just a kid.
Really?
I was in elementary school.
Okay.
Okay, great. So you were able to deal with your mental health, and then how'd you deal with your substance use?
I dealt with my substance use in actually a very, in a sense, a predictable way, I guess you could say. I did not want anything to do with recovery, treatment, any kind of help, 12-step recovery, 12-step meetings, that kind of thing. This was my life. This is the way I do things. This is me. Because my drinking was so much a part of who I thought I was. It encompassed my personality in a lot of ways. It was kind of what people expected of me, and I wanted to be sure that I fulfilled their desires. So I had a lot of denial, and I say predictable because I have yet to see somebody come into treatment who doesn't have some form of denial. So I danced around, you might say, 12-step recovery for a number of years. Always, once I started going, first meeting I went to was 1980. First meeting I went to for myself, and I thought, this is the weirdest thing I've ever seen. It was a morning meeting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, smoke-filled. People are drinking coffee, laughing, and I'm thinking to myself, what's so darn funny? Do you know what I've been going through?
Yeah.
Kind of thing.
And you were how old?
At that point, I would have been 34.
Okay, so 34. All right.
First
At this
meeting.
meeting, yeah.
I sobered up at 42. So, again, somewhat predictable. You see a lot of people who have been kind of in and out of the program, but never sustaining sobriety. And the problem with, one of the difficulties with me is I couldn't imagine life without some mood-altering, some mind-altering substance. I couldn't fathom that. So even when I, quote, tried to quit drinking for short periods of time, I would always have something else that I used. So I never really got clean and sober until I was 42.
And so how did you come to find that connection in AA?
Okay. Last drink I took was in city Chicago, south side of Chicago, about, I don't know, 8 o'clock in the morning. I'd been on a 3 or 4 day bender, basically, alcohol and other additives. And I had basically run out of money and close to running out of money and run out of other things. And I was going to have last couple of drinks before I jumped on a train and got out to western suburb where I had a place to stay. And I went in this bar. It was a weekday morning. In the morning, I was the only one in there except for the bartender, who was a woman dressed as a cowgirl, of course, because of a Western motif bar. She was very old. I remember she had a cigarette hanging out of her mouth, and I remember the mirrors play a lot of roles in people's final surrender to recovery. But I saw myself in the mirror, in a bar where all the bottles are there, and I kind of saw myself between the bottles, and something struck me that I think the party's over, And I went to the train station, Union Station, and which is like Grand Central Station, huge. People coming, thousands of people coming and going to work and here and there, and I'm standing there just half alive, basically. And out of nowhere, this guy from an AA meeting I knew out in the western suburb that I'd been in and out of, he was in front of me. He said, "You don't look so good." He said, "You got to get back to our meeting again." I haven't taken a drink since.
Wow. So what would you call that? What do you think happened in that moment?
Oh, we talk a lot, in the program about God shots. I don't question at all that a higher power was definitely influential in that moment. I can't say how or why exactly. I don't profess to know all there is, but I do have strong faith that I developed through 12-step recovery. But something happened. That's all I can tell you. And I did go back to that meeting the next night, and as I say, I haven't taken a drink since.
What did that surrender feel like?
It felt like relief. It also felt very frightening in a way. Again, imagining stepping off into a sober culture versus the culture of addiction, which is culture of addiction is a whole another world, and that's what I was familiar with. I led two lives a lot of my drinking career. I had very good, upstanding jobs at various times. So at certain times I would have to play the role during the day with brutal hangovers, little bottles of booze in my office, hidden away, the alcoholic trying to hide what was really going on. And by night it was, back into the dark world, basically. So that being able to figure out in recovery, I knew there was a whole person in there somewhere, but I had been so submerged and basically out, inebriated or under the influence of something for so long, I had no idea how to find myself.
How did that feel emotionally for you, finding yourself again? It was a process. The process, quite honestly, goes on, but I can honestly say that my life now and the way I feel now, I mean, I'm
at peace with myself. I truly do love myself. I never thought I could really say that. I was always the egomaniac with the inferiority complex, you know. I was the one, let's party with John, you know, because it's going to be a lot of fun. So I almost felt an obligation, in a sense, to lead the parade. The problem is the party was never over for me.
Right.
When everyone else was home in bed, I was like, let's get going.
Yeah, I was the same way.
Yeah.
People didn't understand that.
Yeah.
So you found your people within the program.
Absolutely.
And we were talking candidly before we started filming about fears and doing those initial meetings and meeting people in the program. And the more I talk to people, the more I realize that we're very similar in those ways. You know, they say look for the similarities, not the differences.
Right.
And I think a lot of us at the beginning have those fears. So I was talking about how the first few meetings I went to, I would just sit outside in my car and I couldn't even go in. Can you share some of your fears that you had and how you've been able to overcome those in long-term recovery?
Absolutely. Fear played a huge role in my personality and my actions and so on. Even probably before I started drinking, I have more insight into that now, but during my early recovery, well, when I was in and out of AA, I had a lot of social anxiety and a lot of fear. One of the big fears, we touched on this a little bit, I didn't want anyone to ask me to read at a meeting. Now I'm a college graduate, so I do know how to read, but that fear of just people looking through me and kind of knowing, they know who I am, they know what's up with me, when I didn't know what's up with me.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly the root cause, but I would just avoid reading. I'd go late to a meeting so I wouldn't have to read. I had all kinds of little gimmicky, and I did not like to share at meetings either.
Yeah.
Because again, people are going to judge me. They're going to, no. I finally realized after some time, I'm not different than anybody here. We're all in the same, in some sense, the leaky boat in a way. So I overcame that fear just through facing it and practice.
Okay, so facing it, so being vulnerable, doing it even when it's uncomfortable.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you would just face the fear, push through it, and over time you started reading.
Yeah.
You were okay?
Yeah.
Sharing?
It started to happen. I would even at meetings, this is in my early true recovery period, I would want to kind of sit in the back, kind of be invisible in a way. But when I did get sober, when I went to that meeting that night after the Chicago thing I described, and I'd been to this meeting before, and in fact, my current sponsor was at that meeting. He's been my friend and sponsor for many years. But sure enough, they asked me to read. First they said, it's about time you got a sponsor. I never had a sponsor. So I got a sponsor. First thing he asked me to do, I want you to read. And I stumbled through that reading. And gee whiz, nothing really happened after I finished. People actually applauded.
Wow.
People applauded at meetings. So just overcoming the fear and starting for me, sobriety was a matter of, not necessarily a simple matter, but it definitely required me to, as you said, surrender to taking direction, for one thing.
Yeah.
Doing what people tell you to do. I was always contrary to, I'm going to do it my way. And that didn't work out so well.
Yeah, being able to take direction and clear our mind from that thought process. I'd always be future tripping and this rapid thought process of, I'd sit in a meeting and go, okay, am I going to share today? What am I going to share? How am I going to do it? Oh, what if I mess up my words? Oh, what if I get red in the face? Oh, what if I this? What if I that? And then by the time I'm done thinking about it, the meeting's over. So how were you able to quiet your mind?
Well, I've learned how to do that again over some period of time. But my sponsor has helped me in many ways in that regard, simply by being able to model myself after the way he conducts himself, the way he is. He's very a very relaxed, very kind person, not judgmental at all. He has a keen sense of humor, but the one thing he always emphasized to me, and to this day does, is that your recovery, your sobriety is always in the present day we're in. That's where it's at. It's between you and me, it's right here. It's not off wherever, it's going to be 3 days from now or whatever. So I started to take that concept into actually a feeling where I would see everything's okay, everything's okay right now. So far everything's been okay. So relax a little bit, and different things, interests. What helped me in the very beginning a lot was fishing. Believe it or not, I always liked to fish, but when I was a drinker, I would go on fishing trips and never get in a boat. I'd sit at the bar and look at the lake, that kind of thing. But I got a quote get well job at a fishing tackle store. I started fishing every day because where I lived there happened to be a real nice river there, and fishing took my mind away, and it helped me stay in the present.
In the present, and have patience, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
You gotta have patience if you're fishing.
You do.
Yeah.
And photography helped too. I love photography, and that's to this day something that is I love to do. I love it for just the process of it. Again, it keeps you in the present, keeps you focused on God's creation, and in my opinion, it does. And it's just very relaxing, and so that helps. Those two things help a lot.
When did you realize you were good at taking pictures? Because you're a phenomenal photographer.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I went into the Peace Corps in 1970, believe it or not. That's a lot of years ago. 50, is it? I don't know. It's a lot of years ago. Yeah,
it's been a while.
But in Afghanistan, and I was given a 35 millimeter camera as a gift, and so I started just roaming the streets of Kabul, Afghanistan, and elsewhere through the country. And I was attracted always to the faces and the color and textures, that kind of thing. So I started seeing pictures everywhere. So I have actually a portfolio of photographs from that era. I put together a book of it too, but that's where I started that. Okay. And so it's just continued on. Yeah,
so I hear you say that for you, getting into recovery meant finding AA and Celebrate Recovery also, which we'll talk about in a minute. Having your mental health diagnosed and treated, finding that connection and that belonging.
Absolutely.
And having things that you enjoy doing.
Absolutely.
The fishing, the photography, having your sponsor, and being present.
Absolutely.
Those were all key things for you.
That summarizes the key components of good recovery. I think everything you said there is not only important, I think everything you said is essential. If you start to leave out certain things, the nature of alcoholism and alcohol, we call it cunning, baffling, powerful. Yeah. It's very tricky, and it's one of these illnesses that will convince you don't have it. When you sober up and start to feel better physically, and the fog lifts a little bit, you think, I can go back and do it again.
Oh yeah.
But I'm way past that, believe me. But that does create problems.
And I've seen that with people where they get confident
Oh yeah.
And they get overconfident.
Overconfident,
and
definitely.
they think, oh, I've got 5 years, 10 years even. I've seen people 10, 20, 30 years, and they go, oh, I'm good. I can have a beer now.
Absolutely.
I can have a glass of wine. And to each their own, but I see in more cases than not, that just takes them back down that road. I always ask the question to people is, why do you need to have that though?
Mm-hmm.
What's going on that you feel that you need to take the edge off? That you feel that socially you need to have that? If you've struggled with addiction before, why do you need to have that again? Yeah. So with Celebrate Recovery, I know you're passionate about that. Can you kind of tell everybody what Celebrate Recovery is?
Yeah, Celebrate Recovery is it's really a Christian-based program, very similar to AA. A little different in terms of the steps and sort of the meat and potatoes of it, but it's still all about turning your will over and getting help from some power that you conceive of as your higher power, and it's very similar to AA actually. You'll find Celebrate Recovery in everywhere. California is the absolute mecca of treatment, in my opinion. Not just treatment programs like The Edge, which I will say is one of the best I've ever seen, but it's the mecca for a variety of different programs: Celebrate Recovery, NA, CA, HA, you name it, Motions Anonymous, all kinds of programs that anybody could benefit from, in my opinion. A very close friend of mine who's a pastor in San Juan Capistrano, he says, well, we're all recovering from something. And I think there's some truth to that. But there's no excuse if you're in Southern California or anywhere in this vicinity to say, well, I can't find a good meeting. I mean, literally thousands of
They're
meetings.
everywhere. And everyone is so welcoming.
Yeah.
That's what I found when I started going to different support groups, and everyone just is there to embrace each other,
Absolutely.
lift each other up, and encourage and help one another and be of service. With you being in long-term recovery, what do you think is the biggest lesson that you have learned along the way?
That we need each other would certainly be one of those lessons. I find just in my experience as a counselor over the years that those people that don't make an effort to build a support network, a quote support system, doesn't mean you have to have 100 people that are in your camp, so to speak, but you have to have a connection of people who understand where you're coming from. So one thing I definitely have learned is I need help. I'm not afraid to ask for it, and help is available.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's so simple, but it's so hard for so many to
Absolutely.
do that. So with being a counselor and being over at The Edge, I've noticed, and I'm sure everyone else has too, that you are just so calm and cool and collected, and you have this peace of mind, and obviously shows the work you've done over the years, that you have this ability to connect and engage with people, and they want to talk to you and they want to open up, and you have this calming energy. How do you maintain that? Because listen, there's a lot of different characters that we're dealing with, a lot of people having bad days, good days, everything in between, and you always do it with such dignity and grace and this calmness with everyone you talk to all day long. I've never seen you be anything other than just balanced and very, very peaceful and polite. So where do you get that from? How do you do that?
Thank you, by the way.
It's true.
Thank you. To be honest, I think one of the reasons I'm kind of like the way I am, and the fact I do like the way I am, is faith, a reborn faith, to be honest with you. You know, back in the day, so to speak, I went to the University of Wisconsin in the 60s, which was, you know, LSD and whatever. It was counterculture and so on, free loves. I don't know about the free part of it, but in any case, so through like psychedelics, you know, I'm going to find that higher power, but the fact of the matter is, in my recovery, part of what happened actually about 11 years ago, I got real serious cancer. And I was in treatment and recovery for that for really the better part of 2 years. And I'm not going to go into detail other than to say I had a couple of experiences that were so profound in terms of my enlightenment, so to speak, that it had a calming effect on me. And I think what I always go back to is it's all going to be okay. This all has a happy ending.
Absolutely. I love how you said that, and I think that's so true, to think like that in tough situations. You know, that this is all part of the plan. It's all going to work out no matter what, one way or another. And to know that any opportunity, whether it's good or bad, is an opportunity to learn, get to know ourselves more.
Absolutely.
And become more peaceful. I've definitely found that. I was running and gunning and crazy and loud, and I have found through my struggles and things that I've had to overcome that it has really calmed me down and given me a peace of mind, where I think now it would take a lot for me to get like really mad. Because when you've been through hell and back and sickness and not knowing if you're going to live through it or not, it has to bring that sense of peace.
I'll relate just one incident, so to speak, in this area we're talking about. I was at the time, my wife and I lived in Dana Point, right, beautiful area right near here. But I was in recovery from the cancer, and you know, my wife Laurel she was right there beside me through the whole thing. It was a very, very traumatic time. But I was sitting at home looking out of the window of this office I had, and I noticed birds sitting up on a telephone wire. And they were chirping away, and I just started watching them. And I was feeling kind of down, sorry for myself in a way. And all of a sudden, popped in my mind, and I knew it was from the Bible, but the idea that you don't worry. You know, tomorrow's will take care of itself, and look at the birds. There's some passage that I think Jesus actually said it. Look at the birds. You know, our Father takes care of them, and so He's going to take care of you too, kind of thing. And I just had this weird, overcoming feeling that, what am I worrying about? You know, why all the worry and anxiety? And this is in my recovery. You know, I wasn't just newly sober, but I go back to that when I get anxious or uptight or angry or whatever. It's like there's another passage out of the big one. It says we've stopped fighting everybody and everything. We had to.
Yeah.
And that doesn't mean you roll over for everyone and don't assert yourself or stand up for yourself, but you first take care of yourself and put things in balance, and you don't have to be the center of the universe all the time. You know, I used to try to run the whole world. Didn't work out too well. And
being able to slow down and appreciate those moments, since those moments are really all we have. And
that's right.
Right now. Okay. Well, I want to ask you one more thing.
Sure.
So you said earlier that when you looked at yourself in that bar and you knew something needed to change, when you look at yourself now, what do you see?
I see a person who has experienced a lot of beautiful things. I've had a lot of opportunities. I've seen and met a lot of really cool people. I feel like I've really been blessed in that regard. But I also just see a person who wants to enjoy the rest of this day. You know, even though I have to be on the 91, I live up in the mountains now, so I've got a ways to drive, but and the freeways are packed, but that's okay. I'll listen to some music on the radio or something. But I've been just absolutely, my life has been great, and I want to be, here's my goal. I'm not a real goal-oriented person, but this is my professional goal. First of all, I'd like to end my career in counseling at the program The Edge, which is an unbelievable treatment program. So I'd love to end it there, whenever, but I'd like to end it when I'm about 100 years old.
I love that. Hear that? 100 years old. Okay,
Yeah.
we got some time.
You know, you can peel me off the chair, and then
Okay.
yeah. So I'm just going to enjoy the rest of the day.
Well, thank you. You have given me a sense of calm just in this interview.
No, thank you.
And it really is making me reflect, you know, and look at myself and taking a deep breath and just being present in this moment with you and your insight and your knowledge and your experience over the years of being in recovery. So thank you for being you.
Thank you.
And thank you for coming on the
Thank
show.
you very much.
Thanks,
you.
everybody. We'll see you next time.
Okay.
Thank you so much.